Triple E EDC back again with another knife video. So this is the Kershaw Strata XL, and this is a ridiculous knife. I mean, absolutely ridiculous knife. It's essentially a variation of the Spanish Navaja, and which is a popular traditional style of knife from Spain, and it's attractive, I'll tell you that, but it's also it's ridiculous. And let's get to why it's ridiculous right off the bat. We're going to do some size comparisons. So this is the Benchmade Mini Griptilian, and this is the Benchmade Griptilian. So this is a full-size knife, and this thing is dwarfing it. So you can definitely see that this is just sized comically large. So this is one of those knives that you're not going to whip out at work unless you work in kind of a weird environment, or an environment where knives are acceptable. This is a absolutely ridiculous knife. It's going to scare a lot of people, and it'll make other people smile, just because of the sheer ridiculousness of it. I'm going to do another size comparison here. Here's a Delica, and here is what most people would think of as a ridiculously large knife. Here's the Marfione, Strider, mixed Strider. I'll probably get comments below about that. This is the Strider Custom Yeti XL, and this is, by a lot of people would consider this to be a huge knife, but this thing even dwarfs that. So that just goes to show you just how big this thing is. It is comically large. This is really Kershaw, in my opinion, this is Kershaw's attempt at a cold steel Espada XL. It's their chance to do something like that within Kershaw's price range and everything like that. So kind of interesting. So this is I believe this is steel frame lock. The blade on here is D2, and you've got a G10 handle. I think that's a copper accent. Yeah, these are copper accents. So you've just got an interesting combination of materials here. It's a comically large knife, as I said, and I'm repeating myself because it really is very large. But let's go ahead and talk about the good on this thing. So the good on this thing right off the bat, in addition to those materials, is this blade is it's a good cutter for the size of the blade here. I mean, I've been using this to cut cardboard, and I broke down a ton of boxes with this thing, and it is alarmingly comfortable to do that with, and it really glides through the boxes like butter for the most part. I think part of that has to do with how long it has to come down to a thin grind over here, thin. It's pretty thin behind the edge after it makes that descent towards the edge. And you can look at the stock thickness on this. It's not a thick stock to begin with. It's actually fairly thin. For the size of this knife, this is a really thin stock. So then you take that thin stock and you angle it down for a long ways to a thinner edge, and this ends up being a pretty thin edge that really glides through cardboard, as I said. So very interesting in that regard that they made those design choices, but that I enjoy it. I really do. The blade shape on here is really nice. It has a nice clip point. This is that Navaja style, but at least the top of the blade, you sort of get that. But the bottom of the blade is almost like a classic drop point, right, or a classic clip point. So you're getting a decent amount of flat here, and then you're getting a decent amount of belly here, and it's just a great cutting shape. So I think that the blade is well designed in that regard. The handle is actually, like I said, really comfortable, despite the fact that it is completely flat and there's zero contouring, and the fact that this is fairly thin. I mean, let's look at it up against the Para 3. This is thinner than the Para 3, not just in stock, but in handle width. So when you go to hold this thing, you would expect it to feel too thin. I don't think it does. It's probably about a 7.5 in ergonomics, despite how flat it is, because this is shaped so well. This area right here is shaped very, very well for my large glove size hands. I really like it. Now that being said, you have all this sticking out back here, but that's kind of the, what you're getting when you're getting a blade this big. If you want to ask me about this choke back position, the ergonomics on the choke back position are probably going to be something like a 6, maybe a 5.5. And why is that? Considering this is mostly a neutral style of handle, mainly because this is sharp enough right here. And I shouldn't say sharp enough, but it's thin enough that although here it's not digging into your hand, mainly because this is positioned right in the joint, right? But over here it's not positioned in the joint really. You're sort of getting pinched in between the lock bar and the show side. So it's not the best for a choke back position, but the choke up, the regular position is fairly comfortable. The action on this is actually really good. I think are these washers or bearings? I forgot to check. These are, it looks like washers, or it could be cage bearings. I don't know. If you guys know, drop a comment below, or you can check out. I'm going to link below this product on DLT. DLT Trading does carry this, so if you order from DLT, you want one of these, order from DLT. Use the link below. It costs you nothing and it helps the channel. But that should have what the pivot assembly is. I apologize that I don't have that here with me, but that's that. Anyway, next thing on this is let me say that's pretty much the good. Let's talk about the bad on this. So the bad on this is, I'm not going to say the price is bad. The price is $87. For how much how large this knife is, you're getting a decent amount of D2 here. You're getting a pretty decent construction for a budget knife, which is essentially what this is. But the G10 does feel a little bit cheap on here. It is, I believe, a steel frame lock on here, and it doesn't feel like luxurious. It feels like a budget Kershaw. So just be aware of that, right? So again, yeah, be aware of that. Next, the billboarding on the pocket clip I don't necessarily love. And the pocket clip is really small. Now that being said, this isn't necessarily a bad thing that it's small, because it actually fits in the pocket very well. This probably should have actually been in the good. It fits in the pocket extremely well, and I was kind of shocked at how easily it slides in and out of the pocket and retains the knife, considering this pocket clip is so small. But it really does a good job of retaining the knife. It really does a good job in general of what you would expect from a pocket clip, despite being so small. So I don't fault the pocket clip here at all. I actually like how small they made it, and that they made that design choice. So I'm happy with that. And one other thing I'll note about the clip is that it folds inside. It's inside the screws to take the clip on and off are inside, so it's a fold-over clip, which is kind of cool. But when you pull this out of your pocket, nobody's expecting it to be so large because that pocket clip's so small, which is kind of cool also. All right. Next thing on the negative is going to be the general construction. I said, it feels a little bit like a budget Kershaw, and that's true more than normal. And what I mean by that is when you feel a budget Kershaw, right? Let me see if I have one. So I sort of think of the I guess the Cryo or something. This is the Highball XL, and this one doesn't feel cheap. This actually feels pretty nice. But you're going to get, with the budget Kershaws, they're going to feel more solid because everything's more compact, right? And that's a great thing when they're able to do that. This right here, because it's so thin, you know, I showed you guys how it's thinner than the Para 3 here, and how the stock is thinner than the Para 3. It's a very thin stock, right? So this does a poor job of approximating the cold steel Espada XL. And the reason I say that is, and again, I don't think that they necessarily, I should say, I'm not sure whether they were actually trying to approximate the cold steel Espada XL. They may have been, they may not have been, but if they were, it's a poor job of doing it, mainly because the cold steel Espada XL is like, you know, one of those knives that is, it has a triad lock. It's big. It's beefy. It's not going anywhere. You can bang that knife around and you're going to be fine. This one is not a knife to bang around. There is if I were to bend this, I'm pretty sure I could break the pivot assembly pretty easily, mainly because this is so thin. This is G10 only over here. You know, one entire side is G10. Let's go ahead and look on the inside. You can see, you know, there's not really anything on the inside other than that G10. So while it lightens it up quite a bit, being G10, it also, you know, makes it so that it doesn't feel quite as strong if you were to put lateral force on it, right? But if you're using something this large, you really shouldn't be putting so much lateral force on it, because unless it's a fixed blade, and even then, don't put lateral force on a knife is just a bad idea in general. But you're going to put a lot of stress because of leverage on the pivot, a lot, if you're going to use it, you know, with lateral force. So this is not a knife that can withstand that. I haven't tested it, but I can just tell. So be aware of that. So those are the negatives on the knife. Let's talk about final conclusions. So my final conclusion on this knife is this is not a knife I'm going to recommend, first of all, because it's just totally impractical. It's totally impractical. If you want to know who it is that would buy this knife, is somebody who, you know, has a bunch of buddies or something and wants to have something they'll pull out and be like, hey, you know, here, use this knife, and wants to see the reaction, right? That's who's going to end up buying this knife. You know, it's not really a practical EDC. It's not really very practical for a lot of reasons, but it is interesting, and it definitely will get that shock value out of people. One thing to keep in mind is there are cheaper versions of the cold steel Espada. You don't necessarily need to get the XL. There's cheaper versions of all the other things. So you can keep that in mind. There's also a cheaper version of this that's a little bit smaller. So those are all things to consider. I will also point out I do have a video on this, but OpenL number 13, the OpenL number 13 is a similar sort of ridiculously sized, oversized knife that is also like this big. And that one's $99, I think. And that one is probably going to get you a better reaction than this one. If you're buying something for reaction value, shock value, I think that one's going to get you a little bit more shock value than this one. But they'll both get you shock value. That one is definitely it's definitely a conversation piece. But both of these, at least this one could be EDC. Is it a practical EDC? No, but this one could be EDC. You cannot EDC that other one. So, you know, other than shock value, that knife almost has no value unless you really want to use an OpenL as a machete for some reason, like they advertise. But this one, again, is more like shock value. And you can carry it for EDC a little bit. I will tell you, like I said, it does cut boxes extremely well because of that thin stock and thin edge that it gets as a result of how far it goes down. So before it reaches the V. So again, do I recommend the knife? No, but there are some circumstances in which it would make sense to buy it, and I've sort of outlined those here. So thank you guys for watching. Go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe and the notification bell. Thank you guys for watching.